Beginning with the 2022-23 NBA season, the playing rules have been modified to impose a heightened penalty when a defensive player commits a transition take foul. The penalty for committing a transition take foul is one free throw, attempted by any player on the offensive team who is in the game at the time of the foul, and the offense retains possession of the ball. The defensive player who committed the take foul will be assessed a common personal foul. The main factor in identifying a transition take foul is when a defender in transition does not make a legitimate play on the ball as he commits the foul. Other common factors include the defender in transition gives up on the play. For example, he wraps up or grabs an opponent in a non-basketball manner. Or the defender in transition is out of position and is unable to make a legal play from his position. For example, he is laying on the floor. Let's take a look at some examples. This first play is an example of a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Kyrie Irving, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead he effectively gives up on the play by grabbing the dribbler Kyle Kuzma with both arms. Going forward, this type of play will be ruled a transition take foul. Similar to the first play, here we will see another example of a defensive foul that would be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Dorian Finney-Smith, does not make a legitimate attempt at the ball, and instead he effectively gives up on the play by bumping into the dribbler, Steph Curry, in a non-basketball manner. Starting this season, this type of contact will result in a transition take foul. In contrast to the previous play, here we will see an example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Tyrese Maxey, makes a legitimate attempt to steal the ball from the dribbler, Jimmy Butler, but in doing so, he makes illegal contact and the defensive foul is correctly called. Please note that since this was a legitimate attempt to play defense, and Maxey did not give up on the play, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. This next play will show another example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Jason Tatum, makes a legitimate attempt to intercept the pass, but in doing so, he makes illegal contact with his opponent, Steph Curry, and the defensive foul is correctly called. Again, since this was a legitimate attempt to play defense by Tatum, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Once more, we will see an example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul this season. The defensive player, Matisse Thybulle, makes a legitimate attempt to steal the ball from behind the dribbler, Jimmy Butler, but in doing so he makes illegal contact and the defensive foul is correctly called. Even though Thybulle was behind the dribbler, he had not given up on the play and he made a legitimate attempt to play defense. Again, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. One of the changes from the previous G League transition take foul rule involves a foul in transition that occurs off the ball. Here, the defensive player, Boban Marjanovic, commits an off-ball defensive foul from a position where he would be unable to make a legal play. This would be ruled a transition take foul. The new rule states that any foul in transition occurring off the ball may be ruled a transition take foul as long as the other elements of the rule are satisfied. In contrast to the previous play, here we will see a defensive foul in transition occurring off the ball that would not be ruled a transition take foul. The defensive player here, Terry Rozier, grabs the uniform of his off-ball opponent, Jaylen Brown, in an effort to slow down Brown's progress. While this is a clear defensive foul on Rozier, please note that it is a basketball play as Rozier has not given up on the play, and therefore this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Another example of a foul in transition that would not be ruled a transition take foul can be seen here. The defensive player, P.J. Tucker, moves into position to attempt to draw a charge on the dribbler, Jaylen Brown. But while Tucker is not able to establish a legal guarding position in Brown's path and a defensive foul is correctly called, please note that this was a legitimate attempt to play defense by Tucker, and therefore this would not be ruled a transition take foul. This next example will show a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul, as the transition opportunity here ended before the foul. We can see that the dribbler, Kyrie Irving, comes to a stop, and he is then fouled by the defensive player, TJ McConnell. Because the foul occurred after the transition opportunity had ended, this would be ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. By definition, a transition scoring opportunity only exists when the offensive team is continuously advancing the ball. The next play on the video will show another change from the previous G League transition take foul rule. The defensive player here, Aaron Gordon, immediately fouls his opponent, Lauri Markkanen, after the change of possession, but before Markkanen has the opportunity to advance the ball. Under the new NBA rule, this would be deemed a transition take foul and would be subject to the heightened penalty. The final play on the video will show an example of a clear path foul from last season that will still be ruled a clear path foul this season and not a transition take foul. The defender, Obi Toppin, is clearly behind the offensive player with the ball, Lamar Stevens, when Toppin commits the foul. Because there is no defender between the ball and the basket at the time of the foul, this is a clear path foul. The penalty for a clear path foul is 2 free throws, and the offended team retains possession of the ball. A few final notes to share. The transition take foul rule is not in effect in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter or last 2 minutes of any overtime period. The penalty for a transition take foul, 1 free throw plus possession, applies regardless of whether a team already reached the free throw bonus. A team may challenge a transition take foul to review whether a foul was committed, but a team may not challenge a transition take foul to review whether the play met the criteria of a transition take foul. We hope this video helps to explain the new NBA transition take foul rule. Thanks for watching.